Welcome to Mission Control Houston. I'm NASA's Sandra Jones. You're looking at live views of the Northrop Grumman CRS-15 cargo resupply mission as it approaches the International Space Station for capture and berthing this morning, February 22nd. Teams in Mission Control Houston here in Houston, Texas are monitoring today's capture and berthing. Today's flight director is Adi Boulis, and to their right is Neil Nagata, who is serving as today's CAPCOM, or capsule communicator. They'll be directly communicating with the astronauts aboard the International Space Station during today's capture and berthing. They'll be walking the crew members through the procedures ahead of Cygnus's arrival. Cygnus is scheduled to be captured at 3:40 a.m. Central Time, 4:40 a.m. Eastern Time today. And our visiting vehicle officer today is Tom Castleberry. He'll be communicating its status with the teams here in Mission Control Houston. Also supporting today are teams in the Northrop Grumman Mission Operations Center in Dulles, Virginia, where teams are monitoring systems aboard Cygnus and are in communication with NASA Johnson. The mission director today is Paul Brower, who's monitoring teams in the Cygnus flight control room. Cygnus continues to make its way closer to the International Space Station. Soon it will pass the approach ellipsoid, which is a 1-kilometer line or gate around the station, at which point joint operations between NASA and Northrop Grumman will begin. We'll look to see Cygnus reach that point in about 3 minutes from now. Between NASA and Cygnus has several milestones this morning it needs to complete before it's able to be grappled by the Canadarm2 by crew members aboard the International Space Station. Currently aboard the International Space Station are NASA astronaut Kate Rubins, NASA astronaut Victor Glover, JAXA astronaut Soichi Noguchi, Russian cosmonaut Sergei Ryzhikov, NASA astronaut Mike Hopkins, NASA astronaut Shannon Walker, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Sergei Kutsverkoch. This morning, JAXA astronaut Soichi Noguchi will be the prime for Robotic's capture. Backing him up will be NASA astronaut Mike Hopkins. Now just 1 minute out from Cygnus reaching the approach ellipsoid. We're currently in a brief expected handover period between our satellites and will regain communications here shortly. Everything's still proceeding nominally as we wait for confirmation that Cygnus has departed the approach ellipsoid. Following crossing the approach ellipsoid, Cygnus will have several more milestones before it can be grappled by the Canadarm2. The next will be a hold point at 250 meters while teams on the ground run checks on the vehicle and space station to make sure both are ready for the upcoming capture procedures. Following this, Cygnus will then cross the keep-out sphere, which is a 200-meter invisible line around the space station. Then, when Cygnus is 30 meters away from the station, it will reach another hold point where teams at the Northrop Grumman Mission Operations Center will check systems once more. Once everything is determined to be nominal, Northrop Grumman will give their go and Cygnus will depart the 30-meter hold point. After departing the 30-meter hold point, Cygnus will move to approximately 10 to 12 meters from the station, which will be its capture point today, at which time the Canadarm2 will reach out to grapple the spacecraft. After its capture this morning, the controls of Cygnus will be turned over to teams on the ground, to the robotics controller, who will use the Canadarm2 to reposition the Cygnus craft and berth it to the Unity module of the space station. The space station is currently flying 261 statute miles across the Bay of Bengal. In this graphic, you can see the International Space Station as well as the Cygnus cargo vehicle nearly on top of each other as they approach one another today. Cygnus recently passed the approach ellipsoid, which is that 1 kilometer line or gate around the space station. The next milestone we'll look towards will be when Cygnus reaches a 250-meter hold point, where teams on the ground will run checks on the vehicle and space station to make sure both are ready for the upcoming capture procedures. Cygnus set to reach the 250-meter hold point arrival in about 20 minutes from now. You're looking at a live view of Cygnus from the International Space Station. This morning, Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Soichi Noguchi will be the prime robotics controller during today's capture of Cygnus. He'll be poised in the cupola of the space station to capture Cygnus with the Canadarm2, and following capture, he'll hand over controls to teams on the ground. Noguchi will be backed up by NASA astronaut Mike Hopkins. Each Cygnus spacecraft is named after an individual who has made significant contributions to human spaceflight. Today's vehicle is named after Katherine Johnson, whose mathematic computing contributed to calculations for the flight path of America's first crewed space missions and moon landings. Katherine Johnson died on February 24, 2020 at the age of 101. Following a career of breaking barriers and helping others reach space, Katherine Johnson's namesake now orbiting the Earth as it makes its way to the International Space Station. It's taken Cygnus about 2 days to get to the point you see it at today. Cygnus launched at 11:36 a.m. Central Time, 12:36 a.m. Eastern Time from NASA Wallops, carrying over 4 tons of cargo aboard it. You can see Cygnus here as it lifted off on an Antares rocket from Wallops, Virginia. Following a first stage burn of approximately 3 minutes and 18 seconds, Cygnus was switched over to its Stage 2 motor, Cygnus eventually making an 8-minute 49-second journey into orbit. Solar arrays then unfurled and began collecting power, which took about 30 minutes. And Cygnus has been continuing its journey to the space station ever since. Everything's still moving nominally as we look for capture today at 3:40 a.m. Central Time.
Good core pressures. Engines remain steady. Attitude nominal. Max Q.
Cygnus is packed with over 4 tons of cargo as it approaches the International Space Station this morning. Some of that cargo includes crew supplies, science investigations, spacewalk equipment, vehicle hardware, computer resources, and Russian hardware. You can see here a breakdown of the pounds of cargo aboard Cygnus today. There is 2,054 pounds of crew supplies, 2,484 pounds of science investigations, 52 pounds of spacewalking equipment, 3,115 pounds of vehicle hardware, 2 pounds of computer resources, and 52 pounds of Russian hardware. Also aboard Cygnus is some fresh food for the crew members, including cherry tomatoes, lemons, onions, apples, navel oranges, and garlic. We're just about 10 minutes away from the point. Cygnus will reach the 250-meter hold point. The station is currently flying 266 statute miles as it approaches the western coast of Australia. We're now about 8 minutes away from the point. Cygnus will reach the 250-meter hold point. If you have questions for us this morning, you can submit them using the hashtag AskNASA, and we'll be answering them live on air. Cygnus is carrying over 4 tons of cargo today, some of which is science experiments. One of those science experiments is using worms to learn about muscle loss. These tiny worms could help us determine the cause of muscle weakening that astronauts experience in microgravity. Researchers with the Micro 16 study are going to test whether decreased expression of muscle proteins is associated with this decreased strength. Results of this experiment may provide a better understanding of the links between gene expression and muscle strength, support the development of countermeasures to help maintain crew member health, and support new therapies to combat the effects of age-related muscle loss on Earth. We're now 5 minutes out from Cygnus reaching the 250-meter hold point. Once it reaches this hold point, it will complete checks with the ground before eventually moving to the 200-meter keep-out sphere before continuing its journey to the International Space Station. Teams on the ground are expecting Cygnus to arrive at the 250-meter hold point in about 2 minutes.
Anton, I have a couple of questions. So, do we understand correctly that we have to activate GoPro?
Now just about 1 minute until Cygnus reaches the 250-meter hold point. The station is currently flying 271 statute miles above the Earth. It's flying off the west coast of Australia, about to cross into the Tasman Sea. As you can see from this view here, we will soon be passing through the terminator line, which is the point at which there is a orbital nightfall. The space station orbits the Earth every 90 minutes, meaning it sees a sunset and a sunrise every 45 minutes. Cygnus has now reached the 250-meter hold point.
Station Easton on 2 for Cygnus.
Yeah, go for Cygnus.
All right, Hopper, go ahead and confirm the Cygnus 250-meter hold for step 2 and 1.102.
Copy, step 2, 1.102.
Now that Cygnus has reached the 200...
On 2 for Cygnus, we do see the Cygnus mode as hold. The command panel LED status is as expected. Prior range is showing 251, and block Bravo we have in both monitors. Lights in the corridor, overlay of the vehicle matches the size. Lights in the circle is touching center.
All right, great report. Thanks, Hopper.
Those words from NASA astronaut Mike Hopkins as he works with the ground team in preparation for Cygnus capture later this morning. Now that Cygnus has reached that 250-meter hold point, it will complete some checks with the ground before eventually moving to the 200-meter keep-out sphere before it continues its journey to the International Space Station for capture. As Cygnus continues to hold at the 250-meter hold point, teams on the ground are beginning a go, no-go poll to confirm that Cygnus is ready to proceed with its ascent to the International Space Station and enter the keep-out sphere. Cygnus continuing to hold at the 250-meter hold point, where it's completing some checks with the ground before eventually moving to the 200-meter keep-out sphere. Everything still moving on track as we look towards capture later this morning at 3:40 a.m. Central Time, 4:40 a.m. Eastern Time.
And Station Houston on Space to Ground 2, Cygnus and ISS are configured for approach inside the keep-out sphere. Expect approach to resume shortly and stand by for the Cygnus PCS command checkout.
And Houston Station copies all, standing by.
As you just heard, Capcom Neil Nagata relayed to the crew aboard the space station that Cygnus has now been approved to depart the 250-meter hold point and approach the 200-meter keep-out sphere.
Okay, station, Cygnus has resumed approach. You guys go for the Cygnus PCS command checkout, hold arm per step 3 in 1.102.
Station copy, step 3, 1.102, in work.
We're in a brief expected handover between satellites and will regain communications shortly.
Via step 3, hold command is armed.
Okay. And copy that. You are go for the command checkout disarm per step 4 in 1.102, 13 seconds to about a minute and a half outage.
Copy that, step 4, 1.102, in work.
If you're just tuning in with us this morning, we're providing coverage as a Cygnus cargo resupply vehicle approaches the International Space Station for capture by the Canadarm2. Cygnus has completed a series of milestones already this morning, the last being a hold point at 250 meters away from the space station. Next up, we'll look for Cygnus to reach about 30 meters away from the station, and it will reach another hold point where teams at the Northrop Grumman Mission Operations Center will check systems once more. Following this, and if everything checks out nominally, Northrop Grumman will give their go, and Cygnus will depart the 30-meter hold point. After departing the 30-meter hold point...
For step 4.
All right, we see the same. And so, Hopper, that means the Cygnus PCS command checkout was successful. Begin monitoring approach from 250 meters per step 5 and 1.102.
Houston, copy step 5, 1.102 in work.
Now, so be advised, Cygnus is inside the 200-meter keep-out sphere. You now have the authority to issue an abort if no comm with MCCH and the light is outside of the corridor.
Station copies.
And that call from Capcom Neil Nagata up to the crew confirming that Cygnus is now within the keep-out sphere around the space station. The next milestone we'll look towards this morning is when Cygnus reaches 30 meters away from the station. It will reach another hold point at this time where teams at the Northrop Grumman Mission Operations Center will check systems once more. Once Northrop Grumman gives their go and Cygnus is departed the 30-meter hold point, it will reach the 10 to 12-meter point from the station, which is today's capture point. At this time, JAXA astronaut Soichi Noguchi will use the Canadarm2 to reach out and grapple the spacecraft. Backing him up this morning will be NASA astronaut Mike Hopkins. In preparation for today's capture, you can see a photo of JAXA astronaut Soichi Noguchi here on board station as he prepares and practices for the upcoming arrival of Cygnus later today. JAXA astronaut Soichi Noguchi and NASA astronaut Mike Hopkins are inside the cupola of the space station at the robotics workstation, which you can see here, where they are monitoring the approach of Cygnus this morning. From the cupola, they'll have a great view of Cygnus as it approaches. Noguchi will use the Canadarm2 to reach out and grapple the spacecraft once it reaches that 10 to 12 meter hold point. Currently, Cygnus continues to hold as it prepares for its ascent to the International Space Station. We're now just about 55 minutes from today's capture of Cygnus, which is filled with over 4 tons of cargo. Everything's still moving on target as we track a 3:40 a.m. Central Time capture, 4:40 a.m. Eastern Time. Cygnus now approaching 100 meters from the space station. Cygnus now within 100 meters of the space station.
For a partial block Bravo inside 100. We do see the light in both monitors. It's in the corridor, in the circle, and the circle is at the center. It's still a little hard, though, to see the vehicle and compare it to the outline.
Okay, copy that, and we're checking down here, and we have no concerns.
And we do have good visual of the vehicle out the window.
Copy.
Those words from NASA astronaut Mike Hopkins as he confirms with the ground that they do have good visuals of the Cygnus spacecraft from the cupola of the International Space Station. The next milestone we'll look for Cygnus to complete this morning will be once it reaches the 30-meter hold point, where additional system checks will take place before Cygnus moves to the 10 to 12-meter point, at which point the Canadarm2 will be used by Soichi Noguchi to capture the spacecraft. Following this, teams on the ground will take over control of Cygnus and will berth the spacecraft to the Unity module of the space station. Cygnus continuing to move closer to the space station as it nears the 30-meter hold point. This view of NASA astronaut Kate Rubins preparing her spacesuit in preparation for a spacewalk that will take place on Sunday. We'll be providing live coverage of that spacewalk. As always, coverage will begin at 5 a.m. Central Time, 6 a.m. Eastern Time. A correction, our coverage will begin at 3:30 a.m. Central Time, 4:30 a.m. Eastern Time. The spacewalk will begin at 5 a.m. Central Time, 6 a.m. Eastern Time.
And Houston Station on 2 for a Block Bravo update. So both monitor 1 and 3, the light is in the corridor, and what we can tell of the vehicle is matching the outline. On monitor 1, the forward light is in the circle, whereas monitor 3, the aft light is in the circle. Monitor 1, we show offset about half a diameter starboard, and on monitor 3, it's starting to align on the center.
Okay, thanks, Hopper. It's a good report.
We're now under 10 minutes until Cygnus reaches the 30-meter hold point, where additional system checks will take place before Cygnus moves to the 10 to 12-meter point, at which time the Canada arm will be used by JAXA astronaut Soichi Noguchi to capture the spacecraft. Following this, teams on the ground will take over control of Cygnus and will berth the spacecraft to the Unity module of the space station. Cygnus now under 50 meters away from the International Space Station. Everything continuing to move nominally as we track a 3:40 a.m. Central Time, 4:40 a.m. Eastern Time capture this morning. The next milestone we're looking towards is when Cygnus will reach the 30-meter hold point. The International Space Station is currently flying 259 statute miles above the Earth as it approaches Honduras.
Houston airlock on Space to Ground 2 for Hecka.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, I have EMU TV serial number 1005 retrieved from the staging bag, and 1007 has been removed from the aft ETA 3015.
All right, roger that. Thank you.
Now under 5 minutes until Cygnus reaches the 30-meter hold point. Cygnus has now reached the 30-meter hold point.
Station Houston on Space to Ground 2 for Cygnus. Confirmed a 30-meter hold and set up for capture per step 6 and 1.102.
And Houston station copies. We see the 30-meter hold. Prior range is 30 meters and working step 6 at 1.102.
That call from Capcom Neil Nagata communicating with the crew as they continue to monitor Cygnus's approach from the workstation in the cupola ahead of the capture today at 3:40 a.m. Central Time, 4:40 a.m. Eastern Time. Cygnus has reached the 30-meter hold point. This is the final hold before Cygnus will make its way to the 10 to 12-meter point, at which point it will be captured by the Canadarm2. During this 30-meter hold, teams will run a systems check both here in Mission Control Houston and at the Mission Operations Center in Dulles, Virginia. The team is currently working through a go-no-go for the final approach to the International Space Station. We're in a brief expected handover between our satellites and will regain views and communications shortly. Cygnus continuing to hold at the 30-meter hold point. Once we have the go for Cygnus to depart the 30-meter hold point, the next milestone we'll be looking for is when Cygnus makes its way to the 10 to 12-meter point and will be captured by the Canadarm2. As you can see from this view here, the station is approaching a sunrise. Again, the space station does orbit the Earth every 90 minutes, which means the crew members see a sunrise and a sunset every 45 minutes. The space station is currently flying 261 statute miles over the Atlantic Ocean. Cygnus continuing to hold 30 meters away from the space station. This 30-meter hold is the final hold before Cygnus will make its way to the 10 to 12-meter point and will be captured by the Canadarm2.
Snaillock on safety ground 2 for Hecka. The silicone coating in step 12 all came off in one solid piece, and I captured it. No sweat.
Copy that. Thanks.
And we'll keep the loops clear for capture. If you guys have anything else, just give me a hold on 3 or 4.
Okay. Copy that. Will do, Kate.
We're now just about 25 minutes away from today's capture of Cygnus by the Canadarm2. JAXA astronaut Soichi Noguchi will be controlling the Canadarm2 to capture Cygnus. Backing him up will be NASA astronaut Mike Hopkins. Everything still moving nominally as we track a 3:40 a.m. Central Time capture, 4:40 a.m. Eastern Time. Filled with over 4 tons of crew supplies, science investigations, spacewalking equipment, vehicle hardware, computer resources, and Russian hardware, Cygnus continuing to hold at the 30-meter hold point. This hold is the final hold before Cygnus will make its way to the 10 to 12 meter point and will be captured by the Canadarm2. The space station now crossing into an orbital sunrise.
Super Cygnus crew is ready for Cygnus approach to capture point.
Okay, copy that. Hopper, we're going to go ahead and circle the wagons down here one more time, and we'll get you a call in just a few minutes. Okay, Station Houston on Space to Ground 2. Cygnus is ready to proceed to the capture point. Expect approach to resume shortly.
Station copies.
Those words from Capcom Neil Nagata confirming with the crew that Cygnus has been given the go to proceed to the capture point.
And Station Houston, Cygnus has resumed the approach to the capture point. Monitor approach within 30 meters per step 7 and 1.102. The crew is primed to issue retreat if primary range is less than 6 meters.
And Houston Station, we copy block 7, or step 7, 1.102 is in work. And Houston Station on 2 for Block Bravo. We do see approach mode. Prior range is decreasing. We've got light in the corridor. Outline matches the vehicle. The light is in the circle, and circle is touching the center. And that was both monitors.
All right, copy all. Thanks, Hopper.
Now flying 263 statute miles above the western coast of Ireland, this view of the International Space Station looking down at Cygnus, which has now passed the 30-meter hold point. Next up, we'll look to Cygnus reaching the 10 to 12 meter point, at which point it will be able to be captured by the Canadarm2. As Cygnus moves from the 30-meter point to the 10 to 12-meter capture point, you'll notice that the movements are much slower and deliberate as Cygnus nears the space station to ensure a safe approach. This view from inside the cupola as JAXA astronaut Soichi Noguchi prepares for capturing the Cygnus spacecraft once it reaches the capture point at 10 to 12 meters from the space station. NASA astronaut Mike Hopkins will be backing him up during today's capture. We're just about 15 minutes away from the capture point of Cygnus this morning. Everything's still moving nominally towards a capture at 3:40 a.m. Central Time, 4:40 a.m. Eastern Time. The space station is currently flying 263 statute miles above the southeast coast of Germany, crossing into Austria.
And Houston Station on 2 for Cygnus. We see 17 meters prior range, and Block Bravo is nominal, both monitors.
Copy.
Cygnus now less than 20 meters from the station and just a few minutes away from reaching its capture point. Just a few minutes away from reaching the capture point for Cygnus this morning. This view down the latching end effector of the Canadarm2, you can see Cygnus approaching the station very slowly and deliberately to ensure a safe capture. Once Cygnus arrives at the capture point, JAXA astronaut Soichi Noguchi will use the Canadarm to grapple Cygnus. He'll be backed up by NASA astronaut Mike Hopkins this morning. Capture will be confirmed once a series of locks and latches secure Cygnus to the latching end effector of the Canadarm2. We just received confirmation that Cygnus has reached its capture point. Teams on the ground will take a final go, no-go poll for capture.
Station Houston on 2, confirm the capture point and hold for step 8 and 1.102.
Station copy, step 8, 1.102, in work.
Again, Cygnus has reached its capture point this morning. Teams on the ground are now taking their final go-no-go poll for capture. Everything still moving smoothly.
For Cygnus, capture conditions are confirmed and crew is ready for Cygnus capture.
Okay, thanks, Hopper. We're checking a few things down here. Stand by for capture. Station Houston on Space to Ground 2, we are go for the Cygnus capture sequence. Step 4 and 1.110, Cygnus capture. Begin monitoring the back away cue card.
And station copies all. Step 4 of 1.110 in work.
The crew just received the green light from teams on the ground to use the Canadarm2 to capture Cygnus. The Canadarm will move very slowly toward Cygnus, and we'll have confirmation of capture once a series of snares have closed. As the International Space Station flies 261 statute miles over the Persian Gulf, Cygnus is now in free drift. The robotic arm is now in motion as it approaches Cygnus for capture. This view from the latching end effector as Cygnus approaches the space station in preparation for capture in just a few minutes. The Canadarm2 is now just 1 meter away from Cygnus in preparation for capturing it. The arm is now over the pin, alignment looking good. Capture has been initiated. And the snares have closed, and we have confirmation that Cygnus was captured at 3:38 a.m. Central Time while it was flying 261 statute miles over Oman.
And Houston, I'd also like to add congratulations to Northrop Grumman, to ESA, to JAXA, to NASA for the successful arrival and capture of the SS Katherine Johnson. You guys have kept the lifeline to station alive despite some very difficult challenges on the ground. And just like Katherine Johnson helped enable human spaceflight during her time at NASA, her namesake is continuing that today. Well done, everyone.
And Hopper, we all appreciate that. On behalf of everyone, thank you very much, and great words.
Those words from Soichi Noguchi and Mike Hopkins welcoming the SS Katherine Johnson aboard the space station. This morning, Cygnus was captured at 3:38 a.m. Central Time, 4:38 Eastern Time. Following a textbook rendezvous, Cygnus was captured as it was flying 261 statute miles over Oman. Cygnus was captured by JAXA astronaut Soichi Noguchi with NASA astronaut Mike Hopkins backing him up. Following capture by the Canadarm2, controls will be handed over to teams on the ground who will use the Canadarm2 to reposition Cygnus and bring it to the station's Unity module, where it will be installed later today. Following a great capture today at 3:38 a.m. Central Time, we'll be taking a short break as teams move Cygnus toward the Unity module, but we'll be back on the air to cover berthing and installation. We'll be live at 5 a.m. Central Time, 6 a.m. Eastern Time. Continue submitting your social media questions using the hashtag AskNASA. We'll be answering them upon our return. For now, that concludes our coverage of the capture of Northrop Grumman Cygnus vehicle today, which was successfully captured at 3:38 a.m. Central Time. Join us for berthing coverage at 5 a.m. Central Time. Signing off for now, this is Mission Control Houston.